Enzo Maresca has said that Chelsea will dominate English football for the next 5 to 10 years with the group of players that they currently have, but he persists on saying Chelsea are not in a title race this season among the likes of Arsenal, Liverpool and Manchester City. But by the metrics, many people are throwing Chelsea into that conversation with these sort of power rankings having Chelsea in between those three other teams as listed above. So in today's video, we are going to decide, are Chelsea in a title race this season?
So here we have the Premier League table, and we're just going to get straight into it. Let's be clear here, right? And this is the first thing in the video I want to ask you guys. We're going to be talking about these three teams. We're going to talk about whether Chelsea are in a title race and compare that with the fixtures that are coming up and whether I think Chelsea can be in a title race come the end of the season. And we're going to be talking about the fixtures of Arsenal, the fixtures of Liverpool, what could come into play with both of them sides that could hurt their chances of a title race. But of course, we can't count Manchester City out. I haven't assessed them in this video, but question to you guys. What do you think Manchester City's chances are of winning the league in terms of if you had to rank this top four and you had to rank them 1, 2, 3, and 4 in their chances to win the league, 1 being the highest chance of winning the league, 4 being the least likely to win the league, how would you rank those 4 teams? Let me know in the comments down below because I'm very intrigued to see 1, where Manchester City rank, but also 2, where Chelsea ranks. And maybe if by the end of this video you change your mind, you can go back into the comment section and change your answer. But without further ado, this is the Premier League table. That's what we're looking at. Currently, after 15 games, Liverpool on 14, so they have the chance to extend that gap from 4 points to 7. But this is the stats so far of the season in terms of we've got the possession here on the left. So Chelsea 4th in this metric, 56.4%. Arsenal actually quite low for them in 7th with this, but again, they had Odegaard out for a little bit of time. They sort of changed up that strategy, and we'll speak about their build-up and how they sort of do things in a bit. Tottenham and Manchester City. Tottenham, the second highest, but again, we're not going to be speaking about them for a title race. Liverpool, 56.9. They're asserting that little bit more control under slot, but I think their numbers are very similar to Chelsea's in the sense that there's been a few games this season where they've been willing to give up that little bit of extra possessional control if it means that the game plan can work a bit better. So for Chelsea, that was against Brighton, against West Ham. We saw Chelsea get 2 good results, actually giving the ball and allowing the other team to have a little bit more possession, giving up that possessional control to have a bit more control over the game state in general. So I think that worked well, and I think Slot has been similar in how he's done things with Liverpool this season. Manchester City, again, they're at the top of this with 63.4% as expected with their style of play and how Guardiola really fixates on that. For goals, Chelsea are actually top for goals with 35. As you can see, they got the highest number of goals here. But their shots per game is 15.3, which is 5th. Again, this is higher than Arsenal. More goals and more shots on target than Arsenal, and more shots per game than Arsenal, sorry, and holding more possession than Arsenal. In terms of goals for Liverpool, they're on 29, so 6 less goals, but they are taking that 0.1 shots more per game. So this is very tight again between Chelsea and Liverpool. Chelsea have been a little bit more efficient, and their goals are coming a little bit more spread out in comparison to someone like Salah, who's got a lot of the line share for Liverpool, along with Diaz. And then Man City, again, we can mention them. They're up the top there as per usual with that too. But again, 27 goals, not as high as you'd expect. Again, 8 goals behind Chelsea already in that sense. Then we go on to the defensive end, how many shots they're conceding per game. And again, so this is technically the lower the better on this one. Chelsea, again, they're 16th in this. So again, 5th, technically, if you're flipping it around. 11.6 conceded per game, even fewer than Arsenal were conceding. But we're going to get onto an interesting stat in a second. Liverpool, again, defensively really good, 10.1 per game. They're down there again with Manchester City, who, again, statistically, they look good. But and we're going to speak about this now on this next page, we're talking about the XG conceded. And that's where Manchester City and Chelsea are struggling more so than your Arsenals and Liverpool. So if we quickly flip back here, you can see Arsenal conceding slightly more shots, only 0.2, but slightly more. Again, these two slightly lower. But on here with the XG, this is XG4, by the way, on the left. But again, Chelsea, they're generating extremely good XG, and that's showing from their goals that are being scored. But on that right side, you've got XG conceded. The XG that Chelsea have conceded this season is far more, 25.13 XG conceded this season. That's nearly 10 more than Arsenal and then 9 more than Liverpool in terms of without the percentages. So what you have there is, despite them conceding similar amounts of shots to the likes of Arsenal, even fewer than Arsenal, and then even not too far off of Liverpool. Again, Chelsea are down there in the shots that they are conceding per game. But what is happening is, due to the way that Chelsea are playing with that aggressive sort of high line at times, looking to be aggressive behind the press, if they do get cut open and if they do make errors playing out from the back, those chances that they're going to offer other teams, they're going to be high XG chances, more likely to score. And that's what's hurting Chelsea at the minute. So this is one factor that I wanted to highlight in terms of that number, and that having to sort of come down a little bit, because that is the sort of number that throughout the season, it's hurting Manchester City now having this sort of number, because they're giving up high XG chances in transition, which are being converted. Luckily for Chelsea, there are fewer being converted, and fewer that are converting that are affecting the rest of the game. But we saw it at the weekend against Tottenham. Chelsea were 2-0 down very early on. Yes, there were two errors and big errors from Kukurea, but this shows that those high XG chances that you can give away, they can change the entire game state. And it was that's another sort of strength that we can take from Chelsea fans, that Chelsea were able to fight back from that, but that won't always be the case. Now, Chelsea, so we're going to go through, to begin with, we're going to go through the first five fixtures, the next five fixtures for each of the three teams we're going to speak about. And then on the right, I've also put sort of a key period of time that we're going to speak about. So, next five fixtures for Chelsea, huge in this, because you've got Brentford coming up, you've got Everton, you've got Fulham, you've got Ipswich, and you've got Palace. Now that, in terms of a festive period, is very strong. That's not to say there's not awkward games in there. Brentford have caused some teams some issues this season. And of course, Thomas Frank's a top coach. Everton, how Everton, especially at Goodison Park, it's a tough place to go. 3 days before Christmas as well, tough. Boxing Day game at Fulham, Derby game again on Boxing Day. Fulham have looked good this year, so it's awkward. It's not hard, but it's awkward. Ipswich, same again, tough away from home. You've seen them this season. They've beaten Tottenham. They have faltered at the last hurdles a lot of times, conceding in very late moments to either draw or give away games completely. And then Palace, again, they're just a hard team to break down. They will sit back in a block. We've already drawn with them this season in a game where I believe we dominated the game. So it's an awkward run, but it's a very good run where if we can accumulate those points, Chelsea can really establish themselves at that top end of the table and really start to sort of see how other teams get on. Because I think this 5 game period is going to be really key for if Liverpool and Arsenal falter and Chelsea can really sort of put the nail in the coffin where they should in these 5 games, then it will be key. The key period I've gone for Chelsea is this back-to-back week in 15th of March and the 2nd of April. The gap in between the two games, of course, the fact that it's Arsenal away and then Tottenham at home, two big fixtures for Chelsea in terms of derbies and in terms of the fans' sort of desire for these games. So these are two fixtures that we're looking at to be key in Chelsea's season. Now, for Liverpool's next 5 games, we go on and we say Fulham, they've just drawn with Arsenal. So Fulham are definitely a team that can cause upsets. And yes, Chelsea have them too. So it's important to think about that when we're talking about this. But yes, Chelsea and Liverpool play Fulham as well. That's their next game. Then 3 days before Christmas, Spurs away. Again, Spurs can cause issues. Defensively, they've looked suspect. And especially now, like defensively without their pieces in terms of getting played through in the press, that is what Chelsea exploited at the weekend. And that's something I expect Liverpool to exploit as well, especially if Romero and Van de Ven are going to be out again for prolonged periods. So this game it's awkward, but it's just one of those games where you really don't know exactly what's going to happen, and Liverpool will go in as favourites, especially with Tottenham's injuries. Leicester on Boxing Day. I like Van Nistelrooy, but I can see Liverpool being fairly sort of cutthroat with that one. West Ham away, 29th of December. I think that could be an awkward one in terms of if West Ham set up defensively sort of a lot more resolute and further back the pitch and they succeed that possession to Liverpool, which is something they haven't done as often this season. West Ham in their press, really not a fan. I'm actually going to be doing a video this week on why I think Michael Carrick is the guy who should take over West Ham. Really not a fan of Lopetegui's out of possession system and his sort of principles out of possession. So that could be an awkward game, but again, I could see Liverpool finding ways to pierce through. And then Liverpool Man United, that is a game where we'll all be looking towards. That can be a real slip up because one, it's a big derby, and yes, it's at Anfield, but it is a big derby game. Both teams really do not like each other in terms of fan bases. Then you got Amorim factor. He can make it hard. He can be a bit more resolute. We saw it in that first half against Arsenal the other day. Well, about a week ago now. But it's there, and with a bit more time for Amorim, it's sort of got a month to sort of build up to this game. I do think that could be another potential stumbling block. So you're looking in this and you're thinking Tottenham and United, two tough games, and then from there as well, of course, you've got Fulham and West Ham, which could be tough games too. I think Leicester's the one where I think they'll sort of roll over. Man City at Liverpool to be sort of decided. Well, I'll put that in the top there. But this February run as well could be difficult. You got the Everton game, again, another derby. You got Villa away. Villa have shown that they can cause team problems. And I do think Emery's way of setting up can counter Liverpool, but I might do a video on that really like nearer the time. That's a few months away. I think that could be an interesting game. And again, Newcastle, we saw it the other day with their 3-3. Again, that was last week as well. That is a game where we saw that Newcastle can, if they're resolute, they can make things difficult for a team like Liverpool. So I think that's pretty much, if that's the February run and that's the January run, or December, January run festive. I think that those two runs are going to be crucial for Liverpool in this season. Then we move on to Arsenal. Their run, a little bit easier. I think there's a few sort of slip up games in there. The Brighton one's the one that I'd be looking at. Again, we've seen Brighton already make Arsenal and sort of challenge them a little bit this season in their game last time. Brentford away can be a bit tougher in terms of breaking them down. Again, Palace, like I said, in the same way as Chelsea, and Everton in the same way that I said with Chelsea, teams that are a little bit harder to break down. So they could provide stumbling blocks for Arsenal. And then it's actually the week literally following on from this that I think is probably Arsenal's biggest sort of run, because you have Spurs at home, then Villa at home, Wolves away, which depending on sort of how they're looking at the time, but then City at home as well, and then Leicester. So three of those five games really tough and really sort of telling in for their season. So this run, straight after this run, I think the next 10 games in a bulk for Arsenal are really important. I can't actually remember if there's one in between those two games. There might be. But the fact stays the same. Those 10 games in blocks are going to be really key for Arsenal's season. Now, this is the last five games of each team for the season, so we'll really quickly just run over this. I think Chelsea have quite a hard run in. I really do. Forest away in itself, that's a tough game, whether Forest are in form at the time or not. I think Forest going away to the City ground at Forest, I think it's never an easy game. And I do think that is the sort of atmosphere on the last day of the season. It's not going to be easy, so it depends where Chelsea are at come that time. United, everybody knows sort of the bogey nature of the United fixture in recent years. Newcastle at St James's Park, again, a place that Chelsea have struggled in recent years. Liverpool at home, that again, as we've said, if Liverpool are going to be the ones in and around the title, that is going to be a tough fixture, especially depending where the sort of the league looks at that point. Because with 4 games to go, when that fixture comes around, that could be even more telling. And again, same with Everton, a tough team. So that's the last 5 games for Chelsea. We're only going to quickly mention the last 5 games because I think if we get towards the end of the season, that's when we'll have to dig into those games really and analyse it when we know where people are at in the league. Liverpool, again, a tough run in though. Spurs, then Chelsea, then Arsenal playing each other, then Brighton, and then Palace. And even Palace for the last game of the season, again, it's that sort of mentality thing. Palace have hurt Liverpool in the past. You had that 3-3 draw when they was chasing City for the title. This has been a side that have hurt Liverpool in the past when they're chasing a title, and to have them last game of the season, it's a big one because mentality wise, they've got to be up for that. And following those 4 games, it could really be a draining period for Liverpool. And it also depends how far they go in other competitions. Currently doing really well in the Champions League. So we'll see how they go in that competition as well and how they fare with sort of mixing the team and sort of fixing things up. Because we're going to go into the last bit of the video once we've discussed these is going to be the issue for each team and how I think they could falter at the last hurdle. So we're going to speak about that in a sec. And Liverpool's one is very sort of involved with that Champions League run as well. Arsenal's end of the season, I think, is the easiest of the lot. They do have Newcastle and Liverpool back to back, which isn't easy. But Southampton, a sort of team that could be relegated by then, again, could be an easy end to the season for Arsenal in that sense. Bournemouth, a tough team as well. So I should probably throw those 3 in the middle. I think that sort of 3 centrally will be key. Of course, the Liverpool Arsenal game will be absolutely huge. So that will be the one to watch out for. But with Southampton last day of the season, that's sort of, I think once they get past that game, and it depends, Newcastle could also be a team that are on the beach by this point. They could be, they're the sort of team this season they've sort of faltered between challenging for the top half and the bottom half. They've had a few sort of poor results as well. Currently, I think 12th. So if they could be the sort of team that sort of end up settling for that mid-table spot, depending how quickly they can turn around their form, given this festive period and when there's going to be a lot of games. Now, last but not least, let's talk about each issue, and we've got the squad on the right here, and then just a little issue that I've sort of propped on the left here. So Arsenal, 33.7 of Arsenal's XG in the Premier League this season has come from set piece generation. And I think this is a key topic for a lot of people talking about Arsenal at the minute. Can they generate enough goals from open play? And I think they do lack. I said it in the summer before they got Raheem Sterling on loan from Chelsea. I think Calafiori was a key piece that I thought they needed, another inverted fullback option to be a little bit more fluid in this build-up phase. They also went and acquired Marino, who I think is another good sort of addition to that midfield that they could do with, who can add a little bit more and a little bit some different attributes in the midfield in terms of sort of ball progression and also ball security in that midfield, as well as the duelist potential that Arteta likes. But I do think they missed out on a transition, almost an inevitable transition monster. And I said this about Osimhen. I said they could go and sign out if they didn't want to go for that striker build, because obviously they were looking at Sesko as well, who would have given them that, or an Osimhen. I did say you could even go down the route of giving them a left-sided outlet type of transition threat, maybe a Lookman who could do a job there, or maybe an Openda is one that I really sort of touched on in the summer window. But the question with Arsenal, can they generate enough XG from open play? And I think a lot of that is going to come down to, one, can you keep Ødegaard fit? Two, do you have Calafiori available enough to play him in this position where they play this sort of 2-3? Because I think this is when they look best, with Timber and Calafiori, and their ability to really switch up how they sort of build up through different sides of the pitch. Their rotations are just really, really strong. And then Havertz, can he score enough goals if other players aren't providing? Again, can they get that open play XG? And again, I like Havertz. I think he's a really big weapon for Arsenal out of possession. But it is a question that has to be asked. Liverpool, I've highlighted this game because, as I was talking about earlier, I think the biggest thing for Liverpool is almost their lack of rotation. And Slot looks to just play with the team that he trusts. So one thing I do think that in those telling periods, if they go further in the Champions League, if those sort of big periods where there's clusters of games, even this festive period, could they struggle from lack of rotation? Now, on the one hand, I think in this game, a lot of people were saying they looked a bit sluggish, they looked a bit off the ball, and Newcastle probably deserved to win this game. So there's that to begin with that sort of proves that point. But also, if you look at their squad, Trent and Salah are really key to this team. I think an injury to either one of them could be really sort of crucial. Less so to Trent, because you do have the Conor Bradley dynamic, and he was brilliant, and he is brilliant. But I do think Salah, especially, this is an area of sort of key moments for Liverpool. And then you've got that midfield. I've highlighted all the midfielders because you've also got Szoboszlai, who you could have in here. But I still believe that in the press, Liverpool can get got at because they don't have an absolute out-and-out defensive midfielder whose instincts are to protect that backline. Gravenberch has done a really good job, and I think Van Dijk sort of helping coach Gravenberch through those moments and be sort of a unit together really helps. But I do think that they could do with another player in that area. So it's whether they address that in January as well for me as another key factor. But injuries and intensity are two things for Liverpool that are going to be key to their season and almost non-negotiable. Last but not least, we're going to touch on Chelsea really quickly. The key areas for me are these three areas. Jackson, we'll start with him because I think it's the least consuming, but he's been absolutely amazing. It's nothing on Nicholas Jackson. It's more so the striker position as a whole. I do think at times Chelsea could be tested and need a different profile, as I keep sort of stressing about Chelsea. Again, will they do that in January or will they wait for the summer? Very telling. That will be very telling, again, what happens in January for Chelsea. I believe that they probably won't do anything in January, which leads me to sort of the conclusion that Chelsea could be missing this until next summer in terms of a box dominant aerial threat option against low blocks. So that's one thing to mention that could be key. Secondly, Fofana, we've just seen him go out injured. Chelsea do have other options. They have Badiashile, but we saw at the weekend that when you sort of play in this way, when it operates and gives you the wrong passing angles, it's not ideal, which could then lead to a whole shift up with Kukurea pushing forward. Gusto being the right centre back, or Reece James when he's back, if he gets back fit. So I think this right centre back role is one to just sort of keep an eye on. I think when Fofana's fit, it's very strong. But I do think without him, you start to sort of look for internal solutions, and they're not as clear. And then, of course, Robert Sanchez. I think, as we spoke about right at the beginning, with the XG that's being conceded, high XG conceded per shot. I do think with Robert Sanchez in goal, he's had some really good games this season, but he's making mistakes playing out from the back. He's also making some really poor judgments. He has made some really good saves this season, and he's actually got some pretty good save percentage rates and metrics. But he's also made some big errors, even in judgment, again, against Tottenham, coming out to try and claim the cross, even though there was only one player around pretty much three defenders. It was the sort of ball that if he'd have stayed in the goal, that could have prevented the first goal for Tottenham at the weekend. Even for the second goal for Kulusevski, we see a little bit of it's probably not completely his fault, that one, but it's something that could have been avoided. And he there was a few mistakes against Tottenham where he tried to play out, and we ended up almost giving them more chances. And I think that could be key in the overall sort of prospect of the season, is how many points will Sanchez lose you compared to how many points will he win you. And I really do respect the sort of in the confidence to continue to play out from the back, because it is clearly what Maresca wants him to do. So I'm not going to falter that, because I do think that if that's what Maresca's asking of him, then he's in every right to do that on the pitch. However, it's 100% could cost Chelsea. Will Jorgensen get a better chance in the team at some point? My prediction was always that for this festive period, Sanchez would be stuck through no matter what. And I think when Jorgensen is to get a chance, I do think it is more likely to come after that festive period, in the sort of January, February months, if he gets a chance to sort of switch teams and play in the Premier League side. Will we see that? Is unsure. Will Chelsea address the goalkeeper situation in January? Pretty much, I think that's pretty much not going to happen. I think you can put most of your eggs in that basket of it's not going to happen. You've got Sanchez, you've got Jorgensen. One of the two will be playing. Next season, can it be addressed? Sure. If they are not confident in Jorgensen to step through, and Sanchez has sort of carried out the same patterns that we've seen so far this season for the whole season, then we could see changes next season, maybe. But even then, you got people like Mike Penders. It's tough to call. But if I was to say what could stop Chelsea winning the title this season, these are the three positions and the three sort of key factors that I would put it down to. I do want to make it clear. I think something is coming soon where a few results won't go our way. Then all of a sudden, you're not in the title race. And I think the expectations have to be sort of limited to the fact that it's good to dream and it's fun to dream now, because why, if not, what's the point of being a fan? But I think you also have to sort of hamper the expectations slightly to realize, yes, we can have fun with it whilst we're there. But if we fall away, if we have a few games where results don't go our way, we almost have to remember quite quickly that Maresca was saying the whole time as well. And again, I do think, again, this is to protect players, but he was saying that other teams are ahead. And I do think that drop in form will come at some point. So I just want to sort of almost end this video on a note of, let's have fun and dream now. But if it does end up crashing down and we don't end up in a title race, but we confirm top four nicely and we still end up winning the Conference League, having a good season, finishing top four and building on what we was building last season, ready to challenge properly in next season and the seasons to come, then I think that is a brilliant, brilliant season. And that is all anybody would have asked for at the start of this season. So that is an important thing, an important note to end it on. And as we end this video, I want to ask you guys to please drop a like if you haven't already, subscribe if you haven't, and let me know in the comments down below, where do you think Chelsea will finish in the Premier League this season?